Good morning, folks. Welcome to another week of The Sense of Things with Jeff and Ron. We are off and running. We are in December. I cannot believe it's gotten here this fast. And just one heck of a crazy year. Everything from the new election stuff, the market being all over the place and crazy, tariffs, and rolling into October with a government shutdown and just all kinds of craziness when it came to data and everything else that we use to figure out where we're at. So, on today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the Ron will talk about some of the historical things going on inside the market and what we're looking at right now and what he's doing personally in his accounts and everything else, or his client accounts. I'm going to talk a little bit about some economic data, as I always do, as the economic weenie on board. But talking a little bit about what we have to work with going into next week's Fed decision, and will we see a rate cut? Who knows? Stay tuned and you'll find out. All right, everybody, welcome to the show. Ron, how you doing, bud?
Good morning. Good morning. It was a good Thanksgiving weekend. I watched at least Elf and A Christmas Story 2 or 3 times to kick off the holiday season. So it's
I
all
can't
good.
do I can't do Elf, and Christmas Story has to be on Christmas for us.
TNT and TBS run a 24/7
The
for those
24-hour
don't listen.
marathon of it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting this year is they're doing like 24-hour marathons of several of the great movies throughout that time. But yeah, it was our Thanksgiving movie. So Home for the Holidays, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Dutch, which is more of a Christmassy movie, but it kicks off the season for us.
I got to tell you, I cannot watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles again. One time was good enough for me. It's just so sad. It's just so with John Candy, just so sad. It's funny, don't get me wrong,
It's
but
hilarious.
it's I know, but it's just there's so
But it's
many.
redeeming in the end. He actually gets to be part of the family. So,
I get that, I know, but it's just a sad thing because of how many people out there are like that, though.
yep,
That's all.
yeah.
So, all good.
But
All right,
everybody has a chance to be John Candy and find a new family on Thanksgiving. That's the redeeming portion of it.
I agree. All right, here we go. So there were some interesting things in this week in history. I
Okay.
actually had to pare it down. There was a couple of other ones I would have added in there, but I pared it down a little bit. So 1776, George Washington arrives. Oops, apologies, a misspell at the
On
banks of the
T.
Delaware. And growing up in southeastern Pennsylvania, I've been to Washington Crossing many times, and I remember when I was a little kid, there was a lot of people out there with metal detectors thinking
Yeah.
that they were going to find some
After,
revolutionary coins or bullets, or I know people have. And also, I lived out by Valley Forge, and people are out there with metal detectors all the
Mhm.
time.
They didn't have enough stuff. And actually, the way you did that, you just did it in your Philly accent.
I
So
did. I didn't know there was one.
they arrive on the banks of the Delaware there.
Philly is more like Wooder and
And water.
Tess, and yeah, it's little things like that. So I
Yeah.
don't know. All right, 1787, Delaware becomes the first
Yep.
state to ratify the Constitution.
Who was the
State
first who was the first signer from Delaware of the Constitution?
John Hancock, is that what you're going to say? I don't know.
No, Caesar Rodney.
I would not have gotten that.
Yep.
If you would have
If
given me
you had
120,
if you have the silver core, yeah, or the quarter when they were doing the state quarter, Caesar Rodney is riding a horse on the back of that.
oh, if you would have given me 100 names, I would have guessed 99 times out of those, and I wouldn't have gotten it. So,
My favorite musical movie of all time, 1776. You'll see Caesar Rodney in there.
okay, good to know. 1865, 13th Amendment ratified, ending slavery.
Nice.
I thought this was in June, but that's all right. All
Well,
right.
but wasn't it signed in June and then it had to be ratified? So then it's got to go around all the states and everything else by that point. So,
Okay. Yeah, I should know more history about that. I don't.
yeah.
1884, Washington Monument complete. And if everybody knows and anybody's ever seen the Washington Monument, it's actually two different stones. They got about a third of the way up, and they didn't have, it was either enough money or enough stone. and then they finished it, and you could see where that line is of the two different stones.
Yeah, they ran out of money and then they started a civil war right in the middle of construction of it and decided. But and if I remember correctly, I think the stone quarry where they were getting the stone was in Virginia, so it wasn't like you were just going to be going in there and quarrying and bringing stone across
It's
the
an
line.
interesting history with it, though.
Yeah, it really is.
1909, the U.S. Patent Office grants a patent to chemist Leo Baekeland for making insoluble products of phenol and formaldehyde, plastic.
Okay. Plastic. Huh. Interesting.
And we have a big plastic problem today, as we have been for the last many decades.
Yeah, so thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Leo. He could have been doctor too, who knows? 1913, Ford's assembly line starts rolling.
Interesting.
Revolutionary way of manufacturing everything, changing everything. 1941, Pearl Harbor attack. That'll be on Sunday. 1954, Joseph McCarthy condemned by Senate by a vote of 64 to 22. And then I added my own line there after he ruined many innocent
Yes.
lives. And
Yes,
many of these
absolutely.
people took decades to recover. Some of them never recovered.
And him and Cohen,
Roy,
his attorney buddy, yeah.
Roy Cohn. Yep. 1959, Antarctica. Oh, God, sorry about that. Antarctica made a military free continent. 12
Okay.
nations include the United States, and Russia agreed to that. I did not know
Interesting.
that.
I was watching something about that the other day. The Russian delegation or their group down there during I think it was either the 1960s or I'm sorry, 1970s, late 70s or early 80s. One of the doctors down there that was with the Russian delegation ended up with appendicitis and had to operate on himself. This is a bad man. You don't want to mess with him.
1970, one of the good things that Nixon did, he
Mhm.
started and set up the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. That opened in 1970. 1979, my favorite, the last
Oh,
AMC Pacer rolls off the assembly line.
the
And,
fishbowl.
and then it was remade famous in what movie?
Oh my God. Wayne's World, bud.
1992. Absolutely. Absolutely. Bohemian Rhapsody got a
Yeah,
reprieve with
got
that
another
movie
pop in
too.
there too. So it revised two things at one time.
I did not know this because
Wow.
1992, the first text messages sent,
Hmm.
forever changing the way we communicate in a bad way.
Yes.
I don't know how I'm trying to think. I remember having a phone in my car in
Yeah.
1990, 91. And then I remember the big phone. I don't remember ever being able to send a text message from
I
that. I
I
think the
think the
first text message was like that I remember was 2003 or 4.
yeah.
And you had to do all the buttons
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
like numbers.
yeah. So you had to hit the button like twice or three times and then you'd screw it up and
Yeah.
oh crap. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd have to look into that maybe. I don't know how they did it a message then. Anyway,
My
all right.
my favorite, somebody was talking about how their kids are text messaging all the time, and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to give them a flip phone and make them have to do texting like we used to have to. It's like you're going to be super
They'll
short
break
on
it in
your
half.
text.
1999, researchers unravel the genetic code
Yep, I do
of the
remember
entire
that.
human chromosome.
Yep, I remember that project going for, and that was that I remember at the time they were talking with biotech and everything else. That was the key that was going to unlock a lot, and it honestly has. There's so many gene therapies today that came as a result of that research.
And even with AI back then and everything else, they still can't. I don't know. I'm a conspiracy theorist about a lot of things. That's one of them. All
Yeah.
right. So stock market cycles. Now we've done a couple of things on a couple of weeks ago. We did like how many years in a row have we had double
Mm,
digit gains and then what happened? I thought this was interesting. This is going back 65 years approximately.
mm,
And you know what? There's always a boom and a bust. But if you notice that other than a couple of significant and severe pullbacks, a snapback. And
yeah.
quite frankly, if you're not buying on the big pullbacks, i.e., buy the dip, you've missed out on a lot. The psychology is, oh, the market's going up, I have to add to it. The market's going down, I have to pull out. And
Mm,
actually, in a way, it could be the other way around. When the market goes down, you should be adding. And on the way up, you should be taking some profits depending on your situation. I just thought this was very interesting because the very bottom legend here, when it talks about average return, you had 51 months of average return, of higher average return, and only 11 months of negative
Of
returns.
negative, yeah.
I don't know.
But the
What are
thing
your
is,
thoughts?
the thing is with it, clients see it as, oh my God, it's down so much. Yeah, okay, we've had look at that string there from what 2008 to what the pandemic, 2020,
Yeah.
400% run up, and it wasn't just straight up. There was time
Oh,
periods
yeah.
of, and then you have that dramatic drop right at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's what people remember more than the 400% that preceded it at that point.
But here's the interesting thing. It was up 400% here, but what if you added new money down
Yeah,
here?
absolutely.
Think about
Yeah,
those returns. So
yeah.
yeah,
You added, yeah.
even if you just stayed with your portfolio up here, but you
Mm,
were adding to the high quality positions here, you would have
mm.
compounded
Yeah,
big
you'd
time.
have crushed it. Yeah, you'd have crushed it because you figure it always is basically if the market's down 51% for it to come back to even, it's basically got to double itself. That's 100% return there to get yourself back to just even, and then you have that run up on top of that. That's very impressive. So it's just calling the bottom and having the money available at the time to be able to grab it. And hopefully those of us that do this for a living get that right, and we're getting our clients moving back in that direction when it happens.
Right.
But
And
you know,
the other last point I'll make, the other very important thing to do when you get these pullbacks, if you have the cash, do a Roth conversion.
yeah, yeah, even better. Yeah, especially when you're down at that bottom there, that's the time to be doing it, especially with the
Absolutely.
new tax rates and everything else under the
Yeah.
one big beautiful bill. It's that's those are the
Yeah. You're
times
just
that
going
you
to
do
remove
that kind
that
of
much
stuff.
more from the government taken from you in the future.
Absolutely.
All right.
That's
All
awesome.
right.
That's
One
a
more.
great chart. I like that one.
One more. I've been talking about this for many years, and then I saw this on LinkedIn, and I'm like, all right, it's about time. So Detroit made a road, and it didn't actually specify how long the road is, but if you have
Mm.
an electric car and all you do is drive over this road, it charges your battery. And I think
Woohoo.
this is a great way for tax dollars to be at work. It'll save people a crap load of money over time. And not only that, but it's got to be energy efficient
Mm.
because you don't have to stop and wait for it to charge, or it's like filling up your the tank of gas. And it'll be interesting to see how many states adopt this, because I think the more states that would adopt this, especially because think about this as like an HOV lane. Right.
Mm.
Remember when I was a kid, you had to have three people in a car, and then they
Mm.
realized that the average is like one and a half to two. So there's
Yeah.
only two people for an HOV. But I think this is a great way of converting those HOV lanes to
Mm.
HOV and charging
And
lanes
charging lanes. Yeah.
on the highways. I think this is a
Yeah.
great idea. Your thoughts?
I totally agree. It's the only way that you're going to really make long distance travel with electric vehicles possible. We were having this conversation before the beginning. When my mother in law died, we had to literally the next day pick up and drive to New Mexico from Austin. And if you've ever driven that route, don't, because we were having a hard time finding a gas station out in West Texas. More or less, if I'd had to charge a damn Tesla in that time period, it would have taken us close to 2.5, 3 days to get to New Mexico because there's just nothing in those rural areas. But if the state came in and said, all right, we're gonna between Dallas Fort Worth and the border, we're gonna make Highway 20 a or at least have part of that turn into these lanes or something, that would make this possible. But I just don't see them spending the money to put all this stuff in, especially in these rural areas. Yeah, it'd be nice in the cities, but I think to make long distance travel with electric cars possible, it's going to have to be there. We're going to have to do some kind of investment like this, at least on the major highways.
Well, think about, I don't know what it is like by you, but they're ripping up all the roads here,
Mm,
repaving them, milling them,
yep.
repaving them, and whatever. Why not at the same time, the next iteration of fixing the
Yeah.
roads,
Put one lane in
do
that's,
this?
yeah, put
So,
one lane in. The left hand lane is this is electric vehicle stuff, which I think is intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. All right,
Yeah,
what you got?
if we want to spend some actual money, this is well spent money over the long run. So
100%.
all right, let's take a look at the economic calendar now that we're at least starting to get some economic news coming out. Now it's mostly delayed, but we're at least getting something. Not a lot this week that came out. We are going into on the 10th, next Wednesday, a Fed meeting. The odds are we'll probably see a interest rate drop at that time. I'll show you the one of the key things we always follow is the yield curve, and we haven't looked at that in a while, so I'll pull it up in a minute. I think interesting this week. Whoops, sorry, clicked on the wrong thing here. Interesting, the ADP report. I don't know. Once again, we've had this conversation about ADP. It's hard to read, and I'm sure I just don't get it. It's so volatile at times. Came in at negative 32,000 after a pretty good report out of September from actual federal government reporting and everything else. I don't know. I think we have to see what we get out of the government and see where we're at. We had jobless claims today, which I haven't even looked at, actually have dropped. So consensus was 225,000, or consensus range was 220 to 230 or 230, 191. So that means my guess is, and I haven't looked at it, but I'm guessing the market's down because they're freaking out because with jobless claims down, then the Fed's probably not going to do anything. What we have coming out tomorrow is consumer sentiment and PCE, which is what the Fed watches. Unfortunately, this is going to be the September PCE, and we're in December. I think it's not really going to be what the Fed really wants to see because it's so far out. I think it's anybody's game when it comes to that. If we look at the Treasury yield curve, we hadn't looked at it in a while, and I think the last time we looked at it, it was almost flat across here. What we have seen is the long-term rates stay up, which makes sense. For the longest time, the short-term rates were up and the long-term rates were down, which usually signifies a recession, but we never saw a recession. So a lot of that, I think, was manufactured. We've seen the Fed funds rate come down. Another 25 basis points pulls it down here a little bit farther. I think we could even stand getting it down to this 3.4 or 3.2 range, which would normalize the yield curve to where it's supposed to be. Short-term rates are the lowest, long-term rates are up. It's still got this weird little bump at the beginning of the curve leading out to 2 years. What's your thoughts on that, Ron?
The biggest problem on that yield curve is the 30-year for mortgages
Yeah.
because that's got to head down to 4142,
Mm.
4142 for the 30-year fix to get below 6. And I think you could see if the 30-year fix gets to about 5.5 or below 5.5, you could see a significant not only refi market, which would then put more cash in people's pocket, but I think
Mm.
you'd see a boom in housing and in inventory going on the market. But
Yeah.
until the long end of the curve comes down, the short end, I think people are just that's just going to be money market.
Yeah. And I mean that the 30-year rate is actually based on the 10-year. So yeah, it is. This is a really steep yield curve when you come off of the 2-year. So yeah, we need to see this come down to at the low end of the Fed funds range here for it to get to where I think it's going to take at least another half point or more here to get mortgage rates to that point where people are like, okay, I'm going to refi. I think more importantly, though, it's going to get the rates down to the point where somebody who's sitting on a 2.75% mortgage like I am is going to go, okay, I can now make that move that I've been considering it. I just couldn't justify getting rid of a 2.75% mortgage and then going into a 7 or 8% mortgage at any time. That may actually get people moving again, which will increase inventory.
Yep, I agree.
All right, last one I wanted to cover is leading economic indicators. And if you've listened to the show for a long time, this is one of the things I watch pretty actively. Unfortunately, we haven't had an update on leading economic indicators since August because the data that they use is was delayed basically during the month of August. And I still don't understand why they don't have it through September because we had data in September. It was October 1st that the government shutdown happened. So I think that's just laziness on their part of updating this. But just to give you an idea of where we were in August, it was actually not looking too overly good. Some of the big components that we saw, the only things that were really adding to it were the leading credit index and the S&P 500. Everything else was pretty much a detractor or just nothing going on. Average consumer expectations of business conditions were really just really bad consumer confidence and everything else. And ISM new orders were down really significantly, which if I go back really quick, sorry to jump around here, we did get ISM manufacturing index, which it's in
Well,
there with the
anything under 50
consensus.
is contraction.
Yeah, it's contraction. So we're still not really seeing that. That is for November of 2025. It's continuing that trend that we were seeing being down a little bit. One of the things that it did signal during the month of August is we actually signaled a recession. It was a little bit below the line that they use, which is -5%. It triggered through there. If I were a betting man with some of the numbers that I've seen here recently, I think that probably reverses back above that red line. But it's interesting and intriguing and something we really need to be watching very carefully as we start getting real numbers again is okay, are we still continuing to see that recessionary line? Because that's never a good thing. When we see it go below there, that is not a good plan. It's been pretty bang on accurate when it gets below that line.
Yeah, go back to the first chart.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
but that line from 2021 to current is just trending down. And I can't remember what it was, how many months in a row it has contracted and gone down. So I think finally it's catching up to with the reality of what's going on in there in the economy and the
Mm.
specifically the labor market. Forget about the overextension in credit.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, we've been watching this for a long time. And it's interesting that the coincident economic index has just continued to bang its way up at that point. So that there's been that weird divergence for quite a while in there. And it's usually the reason that Ron and I watch this a lot of times is because usually when the blue line crosses the black line, that indicates a recession. And if you watched our shows, probably when we first started the show in 2023, it was literally, okay, we're already seeing this, and we were expecting a recession. And quite frankly, a lot of people were expecting a recession, and we've banged through this, and it's just kept on going at this point. So I think it's going to be intriguing to see does this line steepen at any point? Because that's usually what is that precipitous drop during a year, and it's just been this gradual decline. When does it start working its way back up the other way? And it usually doesn't until we actually bottom in a recession and start to go the other way. So it's intriguing to me because it's been up here way above the line for a long time, except for that little blip during the time when we were in
COVID.
COVID and then recovered. But then, man, it has just been on a trek downward, and I just
Again,
don't know. Yeah.
since COVID, we've never had an economy that we've had since COVID as far as what happened, the spring back, all the money, all the free money
Yeah.
sloshing around. And we've never seen that type of a 3-year stretch as
Mm.
what happened to our economy and what the government did to keep us alive. But we've never seen that. I don't know if we'll ever see it again, but we never saw it in history. So it
Mm.
was a bit of an aberration why we weren't officially in a recession, but people talk about there was a rolling recession in pockets of the US.
Mm.
Again, I don't know. You go to certain parts of the US, they're hurting. Like my area, the restaurants and bars are filled every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, sometimes
Mm.
even Sunday night. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, and ours, it's been intriguing watching our restaurants because some of the really popular restaurants, I call this the Chewy's Index. Once again, Jeff's non-number, but just observing life. And like one of the more popular restaurants is Chewy's, which For those of you that have not had good Tex-Mex, it's coming to a town near you because they were bought out by Darden restaurants. Chuy's is massively popular. We're started here in Austin, has expanded across the country. And if you get there or if you got there in the past at 11:05 on a Saturday, you're waiting in line for a half an hour to get into the place. And we've been there multiple times over the last year, I would say. And we get in right away at 11 o'clock. And by the time we're leaving at, let's call it 11:45, there's still lots of empty tables. I, that's just my own personal looking at stuff in my life. The restaurants here are just not as busy as they used to be
Interesting.
over the prior to that. And I would say this has been maybe a year and a half, really at that point when we saw inflation really rocket up and prices just haven't come back from there. They're slowly eking their way back.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye on it.
Absolutely. That's why we're here every week, folks. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you're getting all these updates. Make sure you pay attention because I'm going to be doing some special stuff here, and Ron will as he can on the channel. We'll do some short kind of educational stuff going into next year to help you prepare and hopefully learn a little bit along with the updates that we give you every week, and maybe in some little shorter term bites that you can take in between what you're doing on the internet, in between cat videos and watching people do stupid idiotic things on bicycles.
I got you.
So thanks a lot, and we will see you guys back here the very next time.